All right. Hey, we're talking about things that you can really use more effectively to avoid pitfalls and make more profits. And we're going to talk about CRMs today. I've got one of the leaders in the CRM space to talk about exactly those things. Stick around.
This is the Franchise Pitfalls and Profit Show. Each week, we bring you the challenges and triumphs of being in the franchise development and consulting business. The things you need to make money faster. And now your host, one of the most successful franchise developers in North America, Don Shin.
Hey, awesome. We've got a great show today. I want to introduce Dave Hansen. Dave is the CEO of Client Tether. He has led sales teams for over 20 years. Again, currently the CEO of Client Tether. Client Tether is a CRM system, really, really strong in the franchise space. Dave spends his life and his days, coaching franchise systems, FSOs, franchise consultants, all on how to effectively use CRM, again, to profit them. And we're going to be talking about avoiding those pitfalls. He's consulted in other industries, and he's a franchise owner too, just like you. There's that commercial on the radio. So anyway, Dave, thanks so much for investing time with us today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Don. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. You bet. Hey, I always like to ask folks that are business owners themselves and spend a lot of time with business owners. And, I have always felt that franchisees are business owners, definitely franchisors, the founders and the owners of franchisors are business owners. So I always, and especially, you are a franchisee now. So, and you spend so much time in this space. So I always like to just start off with, what do you think it takes to be successful as a business owner, entrepreneur, a franchisee?
It's that's a great question. There's not like a single magic bullet, right? Like everybody wants a magic bullet, but I was talking to a friend last night who's been in the military for like 25 years, and he shared something with me because he's going through something tough, and I thought, that's it. That's kind of the answer to so many things in life, especially entrepreneurship and success in business. He said, in the Army, he's an Army vet, and he's been on 5 deployments. And he's like, look, like we have this thing in the Army where like we don't fail. Like you just don't fail. And so you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, you make a plan, and you execute, and you pick yourself up. And he talked through this. I'm like, it's grit. Grit's the one word answer, I think. And the fortitude, the emotional fortitude to realize you're going to fail. You're going to fail a lot. And it's not a friend of mine, but the original shark from Shark Tank, Kevin Harrington, he said that he's not successful because he's smarter than anybody else. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he's successful because he iterates faster. So I think it's that, like accepting failure as part of the process to learn and develop and not letting it bog you down. That's really what it takes.
Yeah, and I used to say that, when I was in the corporate world, I'm a corporate refugee, and I used to say that in the corporate world, if I didn't like what was going on, or I got my nose bent out of joint or something, I'd go over in the corner and I could cry or suck my thumb, and nobody really cared, and I was in a big enough corporation, though, even though I was running, literally hundreds of millions of dollars worth of business, I could really do that if I wanted to, but when I realized, when I first stepped out, bought my first franchise, I realized I couldn't do that anymore. And
Sure.
Like you said, you've got to have grit. You got to get back up, and you got to figure it out. You got to figure out what you got to do next if something's not gone exactly right. So I appreciate that, and I do love Kevin. I've met Kevin a couple of times. So very, very cool. So let's transition that then into, again, what you do. Give us just a quick, I think everybody understands what a CRM is, but I really like to hear from people who design them and sell them and coach people on it. So how do you define a CRM? What do you see that a CRM is?
Yeah, in fact, I'm glad you're giving me the mic on that for a sec, because there's a lot of confusion about what CRMs are and what they should be, right? It's kind of like AI. Like for a long time, everything was a CRM, right? Yeah. And right now, like everything's got AI. You go to the store and buy an apple and it's got an AI sticker on it, right? It's like seriously though. And there are all these pundits that are fakers out there that pretend like they know AI, and they're just jokers that are trying to get attention and drive sales in some other platform, right? So, but CRM it's a customer relationship management system. But what it's evolved into today, it's an engagement platform. Like if you're spending money on a CRM that's just holding customer information, you are about 10 years behind where you should be on your tech strategy. And there are a lot of platforms that are truly operational systems, right, that are not CRMs. But they say they're a CRM because you can like put someone's name and phone number in them. They're like, it's a CRM. A CRM is a tool that should be creating scale for your organization. And like, if you take nothing else out of this discussion today, take that if your CRM is actually costing you effort because your people are manually logging calls and manually putting notes, manually sending like manually doing stuff. And if all you've got for your, no, it does automation, Dave, is email drips, like wake up. 2005 is long gone. Like it is just time to wake up. I have people tell me this all the time. Like, no, but I got automation. I'm like, oh, tell me about it. I'm like, I do email drips. I'm like, yeah, 2% deliverability and open rates probably. Like, grow up. Like that's just the world moved on beyond you like a decade ago. So like things like texting and calling automation and physical interactions through like handwritten notes, like that's the way the world moved a while ago. We happen to be at the forefront of that type of stuff, but like those are things you've got to be considering with the CRM now, not just because you can put a spreadsheet in the cloud and call it a CRM, but that's way old.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love it. Engagement platform and a tool that's going to help you scale. So what kinds of questions, when people are looking for this tool, what kind of questions should they be looking or should they be asking, and what kind of pitfalls should they be, trying to avoid?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna address this from maybe two perspectives. Let's talk about emerging and growing brands, like the smaller guys, because they're the ones that nobody ever cares about or pays attention to, right? If you think like I'm not trying to dog on anybody. If you think any of the big box CRMs, or even in this industry, the big box CRM in this industry gives a darn about you and your needs as a small business, you're missing the boat. Like they don't, because they're working on Merck and Eli Lilly, right? That's who Salesforce cares about. They don't care about you. And so the first thing I would look into is how much do they know about my industry, actually know about my industry? Because there are like 1,000, 1,500, maybe 5,000 CRMs. I don't even know. You swing a cat and you run into someone who's founded a CRM somewhere. and most of them are just like really basic things. They're spreadsheets in the cloud that have email drips. And then or they're highly specialized. Like I bumped into someone who's trying to use like some hotel guest management tool as a CRM. And I was like, whoa, that is a really bad idea. First of all, you're spending too much money. This is why you'll spend too much money to try to customize something that isn't ever really going to work well for you. Right. But because your VP of sales came from that industry, is going to try to drag it into this one. So pay attention to also fit for the ability for the system to support franchising, especially if you're using it with unit ops. I see this all the time, Don. Where they brought HubSpot, they brought Salesforce, they brought Zoho, they brought Pipedrive, they brought some big box CRM that worked really well in their software sales industry they came from, or pharmaceutical, and then they try to drop it into franchising. And then I won't drop the name there, I almost said it. I know a couple of brands that have spent over $1 million trying to make Salesforce work for them. I know a couple of brands that have really invested about $1 million to make HubSpot work more or less for them in the industry. And if you've got that kind of scratch to just throw away, then, by all means, go buy Bitcoin and gamble on it. Like, have an upside, please. But but there are CRMs that were built for this industry from the ground up, where you can save the literally hundreds of thousands of dollars you're going to get billed over 2 years to try to make it cobbled together and work for territories as if they were really operating units. That's how they make it work. No, like out of the box stuff that works with so those are the questions I look for in franchising, and also support. If their support team is offshore, run away screaming. If their direct team is good, if they don't have a process to make sure you have real human help to get this thing set up and running, that's not a third party. This is the trick. The third party system that most of these people use it's actually a racket. So here's our partner. They're going to help you get deployed. 20 grand later, you run out of hours, and then their whole job is to create dependencies. So you have to eventually have a part-time admin on staff, and they keep you on retainer. That's their goal. And they charge you by the hour. So if someone's trying to bill you by the hour to get CRM stuff set up, that's also a red flag I'd be very cautious of.
Yeah, absolutely. When I remember I've worn all the different hats, and when I was CEO for a franchisor, yeah, I was just really taken back. Well, wait a minute, you gave me this monthly fee, and this, but now it's 20,000 or $30,000 to actually then use, your CRM. So it was just I just thought it was really crazy. So I'm glad you're talking about that. You're hitting on some things I also wanted to ask about. um, Implementation. Talk a little bit, because I mean that's huge. Everybody goes, yeah, I really want to, I want a CRM, but as you said, a lot of my audience are sole practitioner franchise consultants. You
Mhm.
already hit on emerging brands, so can you give us some tips on smooth implementation?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up our consultant friends. I mean, I've got hundreds of consultant clients, and I love them. And yet, like, what an underserved market in the franchising segment, right? Like, everyone's like, consultants. I'm like, what? Like, you got to
Yeah.
serve these guys and make it easy for them. So, yeah, I'm glad you asked about implementation. Uh, it's the area where most people fail with CRM. Yeah,
Yep.
there are lots of good CRMs out there, but the problem is that the implementation process is generally designed for enterprise level stuff. So unless you're going to spend six figures, like, your level of service is going to be nil. What you need to be planning for, like, there are a couple of aspects to a good implementation. One is you organizing your stuff, right? You need to know what your process should be. I probably spend 50% of my kickoff meetings with clients actually consulting them to fix their sales processes.
Wow. Well, then,
And
that doesn't surprise me, because most people don't have one at all. I do a lot of training of consultants, somewhat of ZORs, and I'm shocked people, you're right, they really don't have one. So interesting. Sorry to
And
interrupt you.
honestly, like, I mean, I'd usually charge someone $200 or $300 an hour to help them figure that stuff out. But I just do it here because I'm like, nah, you need the help. And frankly, most people aren't salespeople, and they
Yeah.
haven't had the background you and I have, where we've helped coach people and mentor and develop teams. And so they haven't read as many books as we have and been to as many trainings, right? So, like, it's okay. It's I just love sharing that knowledge with people. But get your data organized, get your data clean. Like, most people want to just, like, drop data in, and I look at it with them like, whoa. These are 7-year-old contacts with bad emails, and this one says
That's
do not
huge.
contact. Like, why are we putting this in your database? Like, so it's cleaning up the data, getting ready for it, and then also having the availability to learn it. It doesn't matter which platform you're using, you're going to have to learn. Ideally, you shouldn't have to be in more than like 3 or 4 hours of training to know how to use the system and operate. Don't
Excellent.
if you don't get snookered into a 3 or 4 day training packet, that's a red flag too, right? If the system is that convoluted
Yeah.
for your business, that it's going to require 2 or 3 days of training.
Yeah.
I mean, like, 24 hours of training, like, run away screaming. That's not the system you want. That means it's designed for highly complex enterprise,
Yeah.
and probably not for you. So
Yeah.
so
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, and yeah, that's really, really good. So along those similar lines, and again, the cleaning up of the data, just that's probably not an obvious one, and so that's brilliant. I mean, I think right there, what a takeaway. Don't, garbage in, garbage out. You put a bunch of garbage in your CRM, and it's going to be a little clunky until you clean it up, and it's better to clean it up before you start using. You start
right,
using.
right.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of different people. I mean, there's people that are real comfortable using CRMs. There are people that are probably not that comfortable using them. Give us some good habits to build. Give us some tips on how to really effectively use them. Again, my show is Pitfalls and Profits. We don't want
Right.
to forget the profits. Give us
Yeah.
some good habits. Give us some ways to really leverage our CRM use effectively.
Yeah, I'll talk about a couple. So there are three areas of the sales process that people usually struggle. I sometimes say the word suck there, but I'll say struggle. And it's initial lead follow up. It's like, once you've gotten to the point where you're doing like a proposal or a quote or a bid or something, and you got to follow up on the job that's ready to be closed.
Mhm.
Let's just call it that to be more generic, because Fran Dev is quite different, right? You're not
Yeah.
giving bids, right? And then also post delivery of service.
Mhm.
Those three areas are usually where most entrepreneurs get too busy to do a good job. So so the habits that you need in a CRM are: one, top priority, focus on making sure you engage leads as fast as possible. So this is where automation should be making your life scalable, right? So immediate emails with video messages, text, use texting, follow the A2P guidelines, or you'll get shut off now. They're enforcing that pretty strictly. But then also nurture. Those three things. Your leads need to be in call, like that email, text, call sequence. I've laid a lot of tracks in other podcasts about that, but that's critical. Within the first 4 to 5 minutes, you should be doing all three of those things in that order, with a 1 minute gap between the email and the text, and a 2 minute gap between the text and the phone call. It's really hard to make that happen without automation. So that's the first one. The second advice is have a daily routine that you're following up on all your tasks. Otherwise you get stuck in what I call task-mageddon. Don't over schedule follow-ups. Like, don't get so aggressive. You're like, every 2 days I'm going to call these people. Be real, because a lot of you listening are probably solopreneurs or small teams, or you're running franchise systems that are solopreneurs essentially in small teams. So you need to create scalable processes be kind to yourself. But let the system do a lot of those things. Use passive engagement, texts and emails. If you're capable of doing those things, I know ours sure is, but it saves me gobs of time. I have people text me back, Don, no joke. I haven't talked to them in 18 months. I'm like, Dave, so glad to hear from you again. You know what? I got a question for you. And I'm like, and no joke, in my mind, I'm like, I don't even know who you are. And yet they think that I'm like, I'm thinking of all the time. Now, if I was capable of it, I would be. I do care about people, and I want it to
right.
I don't say that to be cold, but just like, this is what the system's doing to create scale for me. So you should have those nurturing sequences, even with people that have said no or have been unresponsive.
Oh, yeah.
You got to be touching them and giving them value. So that's the other thing that'll create a lot of scale. And then the last one is you got to have the same sort of like follow-up nurturing around any sort of bid or proposal or that sales motion where they're getting ready to make decisions to close. Feed them information to make that easy so you don't lose touch. If you're a broker and you've handed someone off to a franchisor as an intro, nurture the crap out of them. Stay in touch, because a lot of deals disappear because the candidate's like, it didn't feel like a good fit, or their marketing VP was grody, or like something that you can't control that stuff. Yeah. But then they get embarrassed and they disappear and ghost you. And if you're nurturing them and saying, hey, by the way, if you have any questions or something doesn't go great, or you have, just call me. Let's talk through it. There are lots of other options out there. Like, you should be grooming them for the fact that they might back off. But a lot of consultants don't do that. So they just lose people, and they're like, people are ghosting me. And,
absolutely. That's one of the things in my coaching and training. We do a lot of that. I try to teach them to position certain things so that people don't just fall away. Make sure you call me, make sure you respond to me. I'm there with you, but you're right there. If that's not done well, and if the nurturing in the CRM's not done well, they're just going to drift away. They're just going to drift away. You also said something, and you and I have talked at conference about this. I had a call center. We had developed what we called an 8-touch system, and we did exactly that because we had felt speed to lead was so critical. We wanted to touch them 8 times in 72 hours, basically. But I love what you said. Another tidbit for folks to remember is you a couple of minutes between touches. We would touch them 3 times in a day, but we weren't necessarily always thinking, well, I'm going to hit them, within 2-3 minutes of each other. So I think that's one of those little nuggets that I want to be sure the listeners take away. I want to talk about one. I have 2 more questions. Want to talk about one last thing, and that is, specific to the CRMs. Talk about the pulling of the units into the CRM from a franchisor standpoint, because I don't think that's done a lot, or maybe it's not done enough. And so I think that's brilliant. Can you talk to our franchisors about how to do that? Why is that important, and how to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. I think I'm working with a couple of brands right now, and they've got an operating tool and no CRM. Or I work with some like restoration industry franchises. I don't get it, man, but they don't provide CRM tools to their franchisees. So they're like Wild West. It's like, hey, go figure it out. Here's the tool to like book your deals. And it's crazy. So there are a couple of big meta reasons. You need data. Right? As a franchisor, you might not think about it when you got 1 or 2 units because you're talking to them every day, you're texting each other back and forth. But when you got 20 units, you're done. Like you can't coach them. There's no way you can scale. You're going to only scale with humans, and you don't have the money coming in from royalties to scale with humans. So you're just going to build yourself into the red with your process and lack of tech. Having a CRM system that's scalable that you can deploy to your franchisees also creates consistent brand experiences nationwide. Yeah. Right. It means if I move to Tallahassee and I call someone to come clean my house, I should have the exact same experience in Tallahassee as I had in Omaha, Nebraska. And so that's really mission critical. So what you do is you take out peaks and valleys, you level off performance, and it becomes a predictable system. Well, that's what you're selling as a franchisor. You're just not fulfilling on the promise if you don't deliver the tech and the tools, in addition to the training and the manuals that they never read, to get the job done. And so that's I'd say those are the big reasons. But franchisors, their coaching staff, they have no idea what's going wrong. They have to call each franchisee, have a slight interrogation to try to have the franchisee tell them what might be going wrong. Right. This is like your field ops manual right now, right? For most people. And then after that 30-minute conversation, then they spend the next 15 minutes trying to hustle through some sort of a solution so they can wrap up that call and go to the next coaching call. Rather than that, if you have the right CRM system, like in our platform, you just click a few buttons and you'll see like a comparative analysis across 5 franchise locations, how they're doing moving leads through the entire sales funnel. Like,
excellent.
Excellent. Boom. You can find out who the top performers are, who the low performers are, get the top performers to train the low performers. Like you can create the real scale in the system, peer-to-peer networking and training. The data really tells a story. You got to have it.
That's awesome. And something you mentioned is critical and emerging brands, listen to this, and that is just the consistency of the message and the consistency across the franchise. I was talking different supplier to the franchise industry, and he's in the space where he has to go fix a lot of problems when the franchisor is at 50 units because they didn't do something when they were at 5 units. And it's same what you're saying. If it's not, as early as you can, have that consistency of feel and messaging and so on. Otherwise, your first 10 or 12 franchisees are going to rebel, when you're getting to 20, 30, 40 units and you're trying to fix it then. So awesome, Dave. Awesome. One thing I always ask before we wrap up, I end with anybody, and that is that you were preparing and thinking about the show today and the audience, and you're in front of this audience in a lot of different formats. If there was one thing today that you'd like to share, or is there something we didn't talk about, something I didn't think about, I didn't ask about, any kind of final thought that you want to be sure people take away from today's podcast?
I would say two things. I'll try to be quick on this. We're going into headwinds, right? Like the market is going to get tougher. I'm having conversations with brands that are crushing it right now in Frando. Mm-hmm. And yet they're talking to me because, like, even though we're crushing it, we know we're not gonna. We're getting a little fat and happy and lazy in this industry about best practices and taking care of people. You have to not operate with a scarcity mindset, but think about 12 to 18 months ahead right now, and start putting systems and processes in place. Invest right now while there's still pretty good cash flow, so that you're setting you and your franchisees up, yourself as a franchise consultant. Like, make sure that you're optimizing those conversion rates today. You need to be rehashing your old leads, have a strategy and a system that can re-engage old dead leads. I call those Lazarus leads because they come back to life. In fact, I'll end that thought with an anecdote. One brand that I worked with, they were trying migrating to our platform, had a bunch of old dead leads. And they're like, yeah, we don't want to migrate them over. They're dead. And I was like, whoa, no, you've already sunk the cost into those leads, and there's gold in them. They're hills. Like, let's set up a pilot. Just trust me on this. Let's set up a pilot. So they only let me do 40. They're like, well, let's just do 40. I don't think this is going to work. And I said, okay, then I want them to be at least 6 months dead or older.
Okay.
Up to a year old. I'm like, let's make this, priest of Baal, dump some water on that. Right. Like, but let's make this thing work. And so We turned it on, and sure enough, their conversion rates on those dead leads were higher than the industry averages for conversion rates for new leads.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
by a long shot, by like 3x. And they were like,
Wow.
this is insane. Like they're like 40% of them responded.
Yeah.
And of these dead leads, that's better than your response rates, I'll bet, if you're listening. So like it was crazy. They had people that were getting disqualified for financing. Like you should see the pie chart on this. It's nuts. But so guys, but that's a huge asset a lot of people sit on and they waste. So
Yep.
it's not that time of a season where we can waste resources now. Leverage that kind of stuff too.
That's great insight. And I was at the IFA convention last year, and I remember one of the brands actually said that like 25% of their sales the prior year were from leads that they had first touched, or first received 2 years ago. And that was shocking about how much there's gold in what we think is dead. Well, David, you've been awesome, man. I appreciate you. Thanks so much for pouring into my audience. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Don.
You bet.